Good afternoon. It's November the 2nd, 2001. I'm Mayo Livingston, and this afternoon, Tom Bush and I are interviewing George Daniels on his experiences during World War II. George, tell us how you first went in the Army, and I believe you went in and graduated from high school, and in 1944.
June the 1st, yes.
And then you were drafted?
Yes, I was. I was 18 years old on June the 6th, June the 10th, 1944. And because of that day, I received a draft notice almost immediately. And I went to Fort McPherson for a physical the first part of July of 1944. And I actually was inducted into the service on August the 11th, 1944 at Fort McPherson, Georgia.
And you came back and took your basic training at Camp Wheeler right there in Macon, and that was your hometown, is that right?
That's right.
And that's where your father had trained for World War I.
That's correct. 7 miles from my house in Macon, Georgia.
How long did basic training last, do you remember?
About 13 weeks, if I remember correctly. Maybe 1 or 2 weeks shorter than that, but it's about 13 weeks. We started about the latter part of August, and I finished up about a week or two before Christmas.
Well, you were scheduled for Europe.
Yes, sir.
In
fact, as I told you the other day, the Belgian Bush took place, and so we were shortened a little bit in our basic training, and then we were also received only 5 days leave, whereas usually they receive 10 days after basic training before you go overseas. But ours was shortened to 5 days, and so I was sent to Fort George Meade, Maryland, in the first part of January of 1945, and I was there for a couple of days, maybe a little longer, and it appeared that they had checked, or were almost checking the Belgian Bush in Belgium, and so since then we actually were transferred to Fort Ord, California, to go over to the South Pacific. We were on the train for 5 days going from Maryland to California.
Well, going on that train trip, 5 days, it must have been, it was a troop train. I mean, not everybody on it was.
Yes, sir.
Was in the Army.
We had a
Did you ever stop and did you get any coconut or any?
One time in St. Joe, Missouri, or somewhere in Missouri, I think it was St. Joe, the Red Cross came on and gave us donuts and coffee. And we had just a very short stop, and that's the only time we stopped, except for possibly refueling or picking on more wood or whatever for the steam engine. I remember stopping in Santa Fe, New Mexico for that purpose, but I don't know where else we stopped.
Well, where did you end up in California?
At Fort Ord, California, which was close to Salinas and Monterey, California. It's a beautiful area of California. However, it was in January, and during the daytime you wore some clothes, but at night it turned very cool when it got dark, and you had to change to your winter clothes.
Well, did you do any additional training there?
None whatsoever.
You were assigned a rifle. You were in the infantry.
I had my uniform and all of my gear that I ended up in combat with. I had with me at that time.
But you didn't have your rifle then. I mean, or did you? Did you carry your rifle, or did they assign that to you?
I think they assigned it just before we got on the ship. I believe that we did.
And you got on a Liberty ship?
Yes, sir.
How long did it take you to cross, George? You were heading. Did you
know
where you were going?
No, I didn't. They didn't bother to tell us either. We were on the ship 31 days, and it should not have taken them that long, but there were several submarines after us, and so we zigged and zagged quite a bit in order to get there. And our first stop after we left Oakland, California, was Port Moresby in New Guinea, and we were refueling, and from there we went on over to Leyte in the Philippine Islands, which had just been invaded by General MacArthur.
Well, you signed up all these guys that you all were with. You all were replacements, or did you know what division you were going in?
No, I did not. When we arrived in Leyte, we went to a replacement station there, or unit, or whatever you call it, and from there we were assigned to different units in the South Pacific. I was assigned to the Marical Division, and it is the only division that we have to this date that didn't have a number. It had a name, and it was named for Mary-Cal was named for Americans for the first part, and it was formed in New Caledonia. So the Cal came from New Caledonia, and I notice even today General Colin Powell has a Southern Cross. He wears it on his uniforms. That was a Mary-Cal division patch.
But you knew when you got to Leyte had only been invaded a while, and it was a lot of mob, and you were assigned to Company K.
That's right.
And what regiment? Do you remember?
I remember, I think it was regiment, I think it was Company K. I believe it was a D regiment, but I may be wrong about that.
Well, now, your job when you got to Leyte, you guys,
I was in the infantry at that time.
you were in the infantry, and you were headed into what the Marines call the boonies. You were heading into the jungle. That's
right. And I was assigned probably the worst job I could have had as a first scout. And at that time, the war in the Philippines or in the South Pacific was not the same as that in Europe, but most of it was done by patrols, and there were no roads to speak of, and you had to just meander and cut with machete a path through which you would go, and we were seeking out the Japanese who were mostly in caves or hidden in some form or other. They didn't build any buildings in the Philippines, or for that matter, in any other island, I don't believe over there. They mostly lived in caves.
You had to either kill to get Japanese in those caves or blow up the caves.
Sure.
You didn't do any dynamite, no?
No, I never did dynamite.
Yeah.
I had an M1 rifle to begin with, and as I told you, there was a time that I carried a BAR, which is a round automatic rifle, which is a much heavier gun and much faster than an M1, but I didn't do it for a long period of time. But since the guy who had it was killed, somebody had to take it over, and I was the one that was assigned to do it. I got all the dirty jobs. I was 18 years old, I was a private.
Well, George, what did you do? You were out, and you were out there. I mean, did you stay out on patrol? How did you get supplies, water?
Well, we were given water from time to time from the supplies, but often most of the water we had, which was good water too, was on the patrols we'd come across these springs and streams, and the springs would come out of the wall around the stream, and we would fill our canteens up with that water and put out of it in the water to purify it. And it's much better than the water they gave us, I tell you.
Well, I don't guess you had any hot meals up there.
None whatsoever. We had K rations or C rations, most of the K rations.
And you would go out on patrol and then come to there wasn't any front lines. I mean, there wasn't any tanks.
Not per se, no. Well, there were a few tanks, but there were very few. We did not use them at all.
Well, how about aviation? Did you have any support from the air?
Not on Leyte, we didn't. It did on Cebu later on. But this was sort of a mopping up proposition that we were doing. I guess when General MacArthur landed, they probably had it, but that was before I arrived in Leyte. And we were mopping up and trying to go out into the hills and to find the Japanese and we either kill them or capture them, one or the other.
Well, were they passive? Did they stay in a defensive position, or were they shooting back at you?
No, they shooting back at us. And in fact, I remember one day, the first day this young lieutenant who just graduated from West Point was there, and he got up out of his cave, out of his foxhole, and said, "They can't see. Let's charge him." And so when he got up, this was his first day in combat. He was killed by one of them, a West Point graduate. They were much better fighters than we gave them credit for being.
Well, was it possible, and you were on 18, you did what you were told, that you could have just bypassed them up down the hill and left them up there? Was that an option?
Well, we didn't do it intentionally, but it's possible that happened.
You and I talked about the other day, a lot of them, you probably didn't get them all.
We probably didn't. I'm sure we didn't. And maybe some of them might have been scared of us, so they stayed hidden in the caves. I just don't know. But for all purposes, we secured the island sometime probably in February, the first part of March, I'd say. And it was fairly secure. Now, that doesn't mean all the Japanese were gone. Doesn't mean they were all captured or killed, but it means that we had all the points on the island that were secure, that needed to be secured.
In other words, basically, okay, you sometime around March, you pulled back. I mean, you
Well, we were in, I was in on the initial wave of a beachhead on Cebu Island, which has the second largest city in the Philippines, Cebu City. And we made an initial wave of a beachhead there on March the 26th. And I suppose for maybe 4 days or 5 days prior to that time, we probably were sort of learning about invading an island as a beachhead. This has been so long ago, I don't really remember the details.
But you were on the first wave that went in and
Cebu, yes, sir.
The whole Maricao division, or just your regiment, or?
It was the whole Maricao division, but our regiment was first, and our company was the first company to arrive.
Did you meet a lot of, I mean, you mentioned the other day, when you and I were talking, that Cebu was some of your worst fighting.
Yes, it was, very much so. Of course, Cebu had quite a few Japanese there. At first, it was a real pretty production. At first, the ships came in and shelled the island, and then the planes came over and bombed the island. But as usual, they didn't get it all by a long shot. But they had moved these naval guns up into the hills, and the hills were very close to the beach.
They being the Japanese.
Yeah, the Japanese, and so they fired those when we landed on the island and on the beach. We was pretty well pinned down on the beach, and so the naval guns be shooting at us, and then at the time as that, we were strafed by one of our own planes, or more than one of our planes, a P-38s, and to this day I've never liked the P-38.
What did you
And
have?
I guess I came close to being killed by my own planes that I did by the naval guns.
How did y'all get the signal to those guys to lay off?
Apparently we didn't get a signal.
No,
Somebody must have told them on the beach, but they finally left us alone. But,
were any of the people hurt? Or
yeah, some of them were, yes, sir. I don't know that any of them were killed, but I know they were hurt, they were hit. I know that.
Well, you mentioned too that it's very important that you take Cebu because of those guns, and they really controlled not only the beach, but they could control the warships that were going up and down the.
Well, Cebu is sort of in the middle of all the islands in the Philippines, and Mindanao was one we had not even invaded at that time, but it was a large island to the south of Luzon, which is the large island of the north, which is probably the most inhabited and the most important island. But Mindanao was a pretty important island, but Cebu, having the second largest city, they had quite a bit of supply depots there, and also quite a bit of warheads there, and so it was important that we get that out.
And that was right. That's right in the central part of the Philippines.
Philippine Islands, yes.
Now, was this while you were on Cebu? Is that when you got to be a medic?
Toward the end, yes, sir.
Okay.
But I landed as an infantry, but then they offered me the job as a medic, and I never did get into training but I figured anything was better than being a first scout.
Yeah.
So I got to go back a little bit when I had that chance.
But when you were a medic, did you? Well, you had the Red Cross armband.
No, I did not. We should have, but the Japanese did not honor the Geneva Convention,
Okay,
so we didn't have any kind of armbands at all. At that time, I switched from an M1 rifle to a carbine, and had that one. But I still was shot at, and I shot at the Japanese. I don't know that I would kill any, but I shot at them, and they shot at me.
Well, is that when you were pinned down on the hill, and the Japanese came?
That was one of the times. I'm not sure what order it came, but we were out on patrol, and we had for 3 days. This was back when I was still an infantryman. When I get the time a little mixed up here. We were pinned down for 3 days up on the top of a hill or a mountain, and we couldn't lift our head more than probably 2 feet or so. They would shoot at us, because we lived on just coconuts and coconut juice for 3 days. And the Filipinos would get it for us in the hills. They didn't shoot the Filipinos. And also during that time, we took Hill 25, and that was I remember very distinctly. We took that on April the 12th, 1945, which was the day that Franklin Roosevelt died. I remember where I was when I heard the news he died.
Now, was Hill 25 the one you told me about, the Japanese? It was 1,700.
Yes, sir.
I mean,
at that time, and now I'm going back with
That's
time.
all right,
I had just been assigned as a medic, and we had the company that I had been assigned originally was trying to dig in, because I told you that the whole island was nothing but molten lava, and it was almost impossible to dig. So you had to build up molten, you had to build rock around and make a foxhole. And they were in the process of digging in when the company had about 140 men at that time, I think, and they were digging in, and 1,700 Japanese were in the cave that surrounded the island, and not the island, the hill, and so that they came out at the time that they would be digging in, and of course we had 21 of those 440 killed, and 20 or 21 of the men were wounded, many of whom died later. And in addition to killing them, they did all sorts of atrocities, such as cutting out their stomachs, cutting out their eyes, and doing all kinds of things. Any part of your body that was, like your arms or your legs or your genitals, where they would just gouge them out, cut them out. There was much of atrocities there. And probably if I had not chased the medic, I may have been one of them.
That was the company you were in.
Yeah.
And
of course, my best friend, he was the first scout in another squadron, squad. I was late in the Air Force, I'm sorry, got the squadron mixed up. He and I used to have kind of a bet who would get to the top of the hill first, and unfortunately he made it. Of course, I was no longer in the competition with him then, but his head was cut off from the nose on up with a mortar.
well, when you secured Cebu, that was in when, June or July?
About June the 1st or so of 1945. Or maybe a few days later, but about that time.
And the war had ended by then in Europe.
Yes.
And I believe you said you all were training to go to Japan.
That's right. We were our company and our regiment was, in fact, our regiment was going to be in a diversionary attack on Kyushu Island, which is the southernmost island in Japan. And we were going to land there, and they were going to leave us there. They were not going to come back and get us off. If not, but then a few days later, the main thrust was going to be land on Honshu Island, which is the island on which Tokyo and Yokohama located. It was going to be the main thrust, but this was a diversionary attack, and they expected about 75% of us to have either killed or wounded.
They told you that?
They told us that, yeah. So it wasn't a real happy feeling.
No. Well, how long did you, the war, and you started training for this in June of 1945?
June or July, at that time, yes, sir.
And y'all probably getting the invasion was scheduled for that fall.
Yes, sir.
And the Japanese surrendered in.
On April the 1st, they invaded Okinawa, which is very shortly after the time we invaded Cebu. And then it was the last major island before they went to Japan. There may have been others, but Iwo Jima was involved about that time. Several of the islands. We were sort of making a stepping stone up to Japan. But the fighting there in Cebu was much more strenuous than it was on Leyte, because there were so many more Japanese in the war, and they were so better equipped than they were on Leyte.
George, were they keeping you posted on what was happening on, say, Okinawa and these other places? And was that coming out in any kind of?
We knew, we got a lot of publicity in the papers and everything from March 26th until April the 1st. After Okinawa was invaded, they quit sort of reporting ours and started reporting Okinawa, which was a bigger invasion and a bigger project than ours was. But I guess they kept us fairly well informed, not as well as we are informed today.
How did you feel at that time when did they tell you when they dropped the atomic bomb? That was in August. Did that news get down to you guys?
We heard it. We didn't hear it right away. It was probably 10 or 12 hours later, but yes, we heard it. We certainly did. But we didn't, of course, we were concerned then because we were told that the condition under which they would surrender would be that they could keep the emperor. And we did not know, we'd always been told that there would be an unconditional surrender or nothing. So we really thought probably they would not accept it, but then later we found it.
Well, they did tell you all,
Well, through some kind of grapevine, I'm not sure, we didn't have radios, but they had a company.
You were still on Cebu.
Yeah, Cebu, right down by the beach there.
And then after the surrender, I don't guess you were opposed to the atomic bomb.
I think it may have saved my life.
And then, well, let me ask you this. Where did you, the war's over, and you headed for Japan as occupation?
We were leaving the Philippines before the war, before the, not before the August 15th, but before they signed the surrender on September the 2nd aboard the USS Missouri in Yokohama and Tokyo Bay.
Well, tell us a little bit. You had an interesting, you were part of occupation force. You got to meet Tokyo Rose, and you also assigned as a chaplain's assistant.
Late on that I was, yeah. And I was first, when I first got to Japan, I was still as a medic in the Mercalli Division at Otawara, which is sort of in the foothills of Mount Fuji. But that was in the fall, it's over for 30 days or 31 days. I did not see Mount Fuji, even though it was right at me. All of a sudden, one morning I woke up and there it was right at me. It was a beautiful mountain. And I climbed about half of it in my life during the time I was there, but I didn't make it all the way to the top. Then at that time, Mercalli had been in business been in existence about 4 years, and so they deactivated it. They started deactivating all the units, and so from there I was transferred to 11th Corps, and I was in G4 there, which was supplied and so forth, and I would interpret radiograms and give a synopsis of it to the commanding general, not the commanding general, the general who's in charge of supply for the 11th Corps. It was deactivated, and then I was transferred to the 1st Cavalry Division, and that's when I became a chaplain's assistant because they needed one. And here again, you do what they need and not what you want sometimes. But I was at 1st Cav about 2 months, and then the chaplain to whom I was assigned was transferred to Sugamo prison. And this was a prison in Tokyo, and it was the most secure of all the prisons there. And in that prison was Tojo, Tokyo Rose, and all the ministers of finance, and all the cabinet people, all the government people of reporters during the war were all housed or imprisoned in the Sugamo prison. And the job that I had there, of course, I was still working with Chaplain Bowen.
Captain Bowen was chaplain.
But I think at that time he might have been a major. But anyway, he was not accustomed to working too hard, I don't think. So we had to interview we interviewed the prisoners, but we had to interview all those who were visiting the prisoners, and we sat in there with them while they were. I had it with an interpreter, so they only could discuss certain things. And this was sort of really enlightening to me, really. But Tokyo Rose was one of the prisons that I really was very fond of. And of course, later she was pardoned by President Ford, but she had been visiting in Japan shortly before World War II, before Pearl Harbor, and they would let her come home. She was a very nice, sweet Christian lady.
She was, it's always been discussed that she got caught up in the situation.
She did.
You mentioned that the other day, and you mentioned it in your memoirs.
She was supposed to, what she did was broadcasting. To be honest with you, I was not on the ship, so I did not hear much of it, of broadcast to the
That's what I was going to ask you. Did you ever hear anything when you were over there?
I heard one or two broadcasting later on, not when it was happening. And they were supposed to be in propaganda or what it was, but I did not hear it. If I had, maybe I might feel differently toward her.
But she was laid on, I can't think of a real name now, but she was laid upon.
Yeah.
Well, then, did you meet Coach Joe or any of those others?
Yes, sir, I met Joe.
What was he like?
He wasn't very nice, for an expression. He probably was the least polite. He had very few visitors, and he really had nothing. He was just anti-everything, particularly anti-American, and he was difficult to work with. I'll be honest with you.
Did you meet any of the others, or did you?
I guess I forgot most of their names,
Now you met them, but could you speak Japanese?
I took a little bit. I couldn't speak except a very small amount. I did take Japanese though, and but I wouldn't trust my Japanese with something as important as that. So I had an interpreter with me at all times.
Well, after that, they hung Tojo. I remember that, and
Not while I was a Sugamo prisoner.
okay, all right.
It was later on.
Well, the guys like Hommel, some of the military people, did you ever have a chance to meet Yamashita and some of those?
No, I did not.
Well, when did you finally, that was all in 1945,
Yes.
was coming to a close?
Well, that would have been in 46.
46?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
But when the war was over in September of 1945, and the rest of that year, I was either at Ottawa with the Mary-Cal Division or the 11th Corps in Sendai, or I was transferred to the 1st Cavalry Division around Christmas Eve on 45. Then from that on out, everything was in 46.
Okay. And when did you finally head home?
I arrived in the United States on August the 26th of 1946 in Seattle, Washington. But I was stationed in Tokyo about 4 months before I came. And I really enjoyed my stay in Tokyo very much.
You didn't have much to do, nobody was fighting anything.
That's right. I had a little bit to do
Well,
with it.
how'd you find the Japanese? Were they friendly? You had your uniform most of the time.
I had to wear a uniform all the time. We could not wear civilian clothes at that time. The ones that I met in Tokyo, I liked a lot, and these people were good people. They were one of my best friends that graduated from Westminster College in New Jersey. His wife had two, and several others. The lady who gave me a couple of rubies was a very wealthy Japanese. She was our interpreter at St. Louis International Medical Center, 42nd General Hospital, and she was very nice. She had my first sukiyaki at her place, and she had been real wealthy, and she had gone to India and a number of countries, and we really liked. She was very nice, and she helped us out a lot in understanding the Japanese people.
Did you meet any of the soldiers or the military people that were in the war that had come home?
Well, I probably did, but I don't know. It wasn't mentioned, so I didn't ask them.
Well, that was a pretty good idea. And you came on home, and I think you'd already told your mother to enlist you in the University of Georgia.
Yes, sir.
And,
she had enrolled at the University of Georgia, and when I would return home on September the 7th, about 4 o'clock in the morning, she had already gone to see Dean Tate at the University of Georgia, and I was enrolled there. The only problem I had was finding a place to stay. I had to go look for one. So 2 days after I arrived home, I went to Athens, Georgia, and found a place to stay.
well, you stayed at the old Georgian Hotel you mentioned to me.
But just for a few days.
All right, good enough. And, well, George, is there anything you'd like to say as we close out? And this has been a wonderful interview. Is there anything particular you'd like to say about your experiences? And
well, looking back, Mayo, I know it's been a long time, and I've tried, as probably everybody else has too, I've tried to dismiss this from my mind, and so I know it was a lot worse at the time it was happening than it seems to be right now, really. But and I'm sorry I had to do it, but then again, it was at that time we all had to do something, and we had no choice in the matter. It was people back home were working in the factories, the women were working, but the men were all in the service. We had a lot of things were rationed and so forth, but it was a way of life, and we didn't I probably would be upset with it now, but at that time it wasn't that bad. But, but we all were, all of us were involved in the war in some way, even the people who stayed back home. But, and I hope we never have to go through that kind of war again as long as we live. However, I wasn't recalled in the Korean War, but it was, I stayed in Turner Air Force Base all the time, except 3 months, and I was on TDY Japan, and with Colonel Dave Schilling, I was our wing commander, and he took a group over to Misawa Air Force Base in Japan, and it was the first refueling in midair that had been done, and it was a success.
Colonel Schilling had quite a record, but George, on behalf of the American people, I want to thank you personally and for what you did, and I want to thank you for coming and having an interview with us in Southwest Georgia Region.